in this sort of arm of our part of the Milky Way, and we're out here in the boondocks. It couldn't be anybody in the whole galaxy greater than us. Well, then we come to a morning to where we realize that that actually is not the case. Along with that, he talked about the long Caldera, and he said, I will send you some runners, and runners to Ramtha are, I'm going to send you an incident that will happen to you that will confirm what I'm saying. And so he sent a rash of small earthquakes, and he said the most dangerous spots in the world is the long Caldera in California. Now, we know about the one in Yellowstone. The one in Yellowstone is getting angry and is growing, but he said the one that will come when you least expect it will be the long Caldera, which is, someone can correct me on this, I know it's either 29 miles long, the long Caldera is, coming off of the mountains.
It's Mammoth, isn't it, near Mammoth?
It is, and through a very famous resort in Northern California. And that the magma is 20 miles deep. And he said there will be an incident that will set this off. Now, it could be either the San Andreas Fault, that an earthquake along the fault line could set it off, because this is angry magma that is actually literally quite a respectable distance wide, long, and deep, that is actually built up behind the plate tectonic activity that's going on between the two plates that make up the San Andreas Fault line. And now either an earthquake along that could expunge the blowing of the long Caldera in Northern California, or vice versa, that it could blow and then cause the San Andreas Fault to activate. Now, one point that is interesting on this topic is that very respectable seers in the past, and this was sort of the joke, I think, that rages still somewhat today, that California is going to break off and fall into the sea. The fact of the matter is, if you want to educate yourself upon how fractious California is, going that fault line going out to the Cascadia fault line off of Oregon and Washington State, is to just take a look at where it runs from Mexico, from Baja down in Mexico, all the way up. And if that thing were to blow open, you literally would have half the state lengthwise being in a major catastrophe. So it's not so far-fetched to say this won't happen, but the fact of the matter is it's an active fault line, and it could. So he talked about that, and the Earth rotating, and then the magnetic field rotating, the Great Intimidation, the 12 days of light. He did say something else that was frightening. I do not have the date of that in front of me, but anyone listening can acquire that information from the offices at RSE about that you will see your atmosphere will catch on fire. Mm-hmm. And it will catch on fire, and it will be simply a spark that will set it off. And interesting to that, I mean, that goes back to the early 80s. The spraying up on the oil in the Gulf of the dispersant, that dispersant, and somewhere, and I do not have it in front of me, is so toxic and so bad that it's sort of like the worst between two evils. Either it's the oil itself or it's the dispersant that brings it up. The toxicity of the dispersant, I mean, you're supposed to wear goggles, you can't get it on your skin, you can't inhale it. Well, they've been spraying that since the very beginning, and devil may care. But there was a report by a group of scientists that were concerned that the dispersants gathering in the atmosphere above the Gulf of Mexico and partly inland was becoming so heavy, and that it was flammable, and it was like 9% off of actually exploding. Now, that would fit into his site saying that the atmosphere will catch on fire.
Yeah, I've looked into that. I think it's called core exit, and it's 11 times more toxic than the oil itself. And
well, there you go.
Yeah, it is creating the fumes that are going up, and along with the oil and the benzene and everything else that's highly toxic and flammable. So,
well, I know, James, there was a report, and we're searching for it because one of our scientists here had found it, and we're waiting to get it. And perhaps your viewers or listeners and pray that it doesn't happen before this interview is broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
But that will catch on fire. That would be a absolutely horrifying nightmare to have the atmosphere catch on fire up above that region. And I'm unclear. I don't know when he gave that prediction if it was isolated to an area, a continent. I don't know. I only am going off of these are things that I know that he has said before and that we do have registered and trademarked prophecy ahead of time. He said, now I'm sure I've missed a lot of information because this dialogue that went on with him and people that came to see him during the 80s and in the 90s, and people were always concerned about the future and would ask these questions, and they would ask him and he would respond, and he would correct some thinking on the part of some people who were thinking in terms of it purely esoteric or Cold War enthusiast or people that were assuming, galactic interference or a comet hitting us or something like that. It wasn't something until he actually took on a whole dialogue to where he gave a very detailed account of what was going on. Up until that point, he was actually correcting people and pointing them into a different direction to start looking and what was happening. So these changes and the dialogue of them have gone on now for 33 years, and you can start just crossing them off left and right of things that have gone on. And so I know I've missed quite a bit, but more recent, last November, he said, was it November, October maybe? We'll supply you with the exact date. He said there will be, watch out, there will be earthquakes in unusual places. And shortly after he gave that prediction to about 4,000 people, we had the Haiti earthquake. And the Haiti earthquake, the Haitian earthquake, it is, and in 2007, in an audience in Florida, a person from the island, from another part of the island, had asked about her country. And he said there would be an earthquake in 2010 of large magnitude, but it will not affect where you're living, which was an interesting little detail. So now we go up to last year, and he gives that prediction. And unusual place is interesting. So Haiti hadn't had an earthquake for 200 years. And then shortly after that, there was another earthquake somewhere in the continental United States. I don't know if it was Texas or it was New Mexico. An odd place that
they're having them everywhere now, just in places that were totally unknown.
But then came the Chilean earthquake. And the Chilean earthquake, he had predicted that there will be an earthquake that will shift the Earth off its axis. He said 3 degrees, but it ended up being 3 inches. And that was very specific about that earthquake as a marker in time of what was coming, that marker would be substantial. Now, understand Ramtha. Ramtha is not, this is an ancient being whose literacy in explaining concepts is dependent upon my brain